Okay, I'm going to assume a pretty low level of experience when it comes to reselling. I'm assuming that you're a true beginner. Um, these are pieces of advice that I think will make a difference for you over the short, medium, and long term of you testing the waters or getting serious about reselling. First of all, I think the most important thing for a beginner probably is to be in a period of experimentation, especially when it comes to figuring out what it is that you want to sell or what will advantage you the most when it comes to reselling. What you are looking for here is something that fits into the middle of that multi-lobe Venn diagram of it's stuff that you can find, it's stuff that you know enough about to resell, or can learn enough about to resell. You're physically capable of doing it, you're capable of storing it, you understand its relationship with the platforms, and you can consistently list it, sell it, and make money with it without too much of a hassle that will interfere with your ability to function as a reseller or as a person with a life generally. So, for example, living in this one bedroom apartment, I would not consider, have never considered selling furniture, even on a small scale, because I only have a Honda Civic. I'm not going to rent a U-Haul to go pick up couches. I'm not going to hire help to help me move the stuff or hire an employee just to help me move stuff around. And I don't have the storage space to sit on a big enough inventory of couches or whatever other kind of furniture that I can consistently realize a return in terms of sales. So that's another piece of the picture. You need to sell something that people want to buy and that want to buy on the platforms that you're trying to sell it on. That sounds like a no-brainer. You would be amazed how big of a leap that is for some people to think about. They're stuck into, they want to sell one particular thing, one particular way. They have a romantic notion about it, and they never deviate. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to become that person. So you want to be in a state of experimentation, and you don't want that state of experimentation to really ever permanently end, but you want it to narrow down, and you want to go from a place of experimenting with niches and big picture stuff, platform stuff that you want to think about, the big cosmological, do I want to be a clothing reseller? Do I want to sell electronics, video games? Do I want to be a whatnot seller, eBay, Amazon? You want to kind of answer those questions quickly and then narrow down to a point where you're fluent enough with it and you're confident enough in those choices and you're realizing enough returns that your experimentation becomes narrowed down to process, to looking at how you're doing what you're doing, thinking about policies on the specific platforms that you're working on, thinking about how to streamline, how to, cut corners that deserve to be cut, how to source those things better, etc. And you never want to get to a position where you're not working on those questions. You don't want to get to a position where these questions are just answered in your mind and you're unwilling to change. This is easier said than done. It happens to everybody. You get stuck into your particular way of doing things, and it's a perilous position to be in because the market always changes, the platforms always change. It's a constantly moving target, and if you don't move along with the target, it will punish you for it. And once again, easier said than done. This happens to, I think, probably 100% of resellers. It's important to keep your feet moving. So let's talk about how to pick that niche. Try everything that seems feasible to you and keep an special eye out for your unfair advantages. This is something that gets talked about in business a lot. Basically, what it means is, given your career, the people that you know, your set of expertises potentially, and where you live, how the sourcing opportunities crop up in your life, in your circumstances, is there somewhere in that picture that you have an inroad that very, very few other people who are competing with you have? Let's say, for example, in some hypothetical, okay, here's a good example, and I hope that I'm not selling anybody out. I don't think that I'm selling anybody out by talking about this because I've heard it talked about on YouTube a lot. Up in Oregon, there is a Nike factory. And there are resellers that live next to like the Nike outlet. Or there's, I know that this is like a circumstance that is like not that uncommon. You live next to some, like the production center of some major brand, and you can get crazy deals or like bulk deals. You can do retail arbitrage. That's where you buy new stuff instead of used stuff. And you just have this point source of, you have this consistent supply of goods that you can buy at deep discount that are not generally available to the larger market for sourcing, that you can consistently turn a profit on. So let's say I did live next to the Nike factory and they had some excess sneakers of a particular make and model that's reasonably popular. I can get them for $50 at this place, whereas everybody else is paying $75, $80 at the cheapest. Then I can go in and I can buy a big chunk of them, and then I can sell those off, and that can be my unfair advantage. Another example is like, I have an unfair advantage here for books, selling books in San Diego. It's a large metropolitan area. The climate is really favorable. It's dry. It preserves the books really well. It's not a particularly reading intensive culture here, so there's not a whole lot of demand in terms of these sourcing places that I have. So there's not a whole lot of competition for it. They are very inexpensive. I can get them in bulk. I have expert knowledge in them, in particular genres, and I have built-in audience because I have a book YouTube channel that I can communicate with buyers and draw people onto my reselling platforms to sell to them directly. That's a huge unfair advantage. You get the picture. Something like that. Is there some circumstance? Do you know a guy? Do you know someone who can hook you up? Or can you make those inroads? Can you do bulk deals? Can you do like wholesale on a particular thing? Like maybe you can wholesale baby formula. I don't know if you can sell baby formula on eBay. I think you can. But you, for some reason, you got like 3 pallets of baby formula for $100 each, and they're worth like retail value like $3-4 grand. Unfair advantage. You want that to be repeatable also. Like books are a repeatable unfair advantage to me. You can get them everywhere. They're never going to really go away, etc. I will say, one of the reasons I became a clothing reseller is because clothing, if you can generate expertise in a particular genre of clothing, I guess, that's generally, that like kind of fits this paradigm for everybody. It's a labor-intensive niche. It's not an easy niche, but you can source it consistently for really cheap. You can find stuff in particular areas of the country that you can't find elsewhere. Like in San Diego, I can find military clothing really easily, and like surf, skate stuff. It just kind of fits this picture. It's a good, like it floats a lot of boats. It checks off a lot of boxes. You get the picture. You want to winnow down your options until you find that formula that you can hit. And then you want to kind of set aside other questions, figure out the platform that you want to sell on, and then just dive into it and go for it. One thing that is a skill that when I started YouTubing was talked about, I don't think certainly clothing resellers had the same level of intensive focus on this as I did and do, is checking the sell-through rate of exactly what it is that you're going to source and having high standards of sell-through. I've talked about this to death on the channel. Cultivate the skill of being able to look stuff up on your phone when you're outsourcing at thrift stores or yard sales, so that you can narrow in on exactly what it is you're selling, how much the demand is for that thing, how much you can expect to get, and getting good at doing kind of the mental arithmetic of, this is how much I'm going to make potentially, this is like the range, and is that net profit going to be worth the amount of headache that I have to undertake to sell this thing? One of the nice things about narrowing down on 1 or 2 niches is that you can answer those questions really quickly. So if, for example, selling books, I were to find this is just conveniently on hand. I didn't actually plant this here. Complete Sherlock Holmes. This is faux leather bound, gold gilt plated gilt text block book. I think this is probably like a Barnes & Noble thing. Probably not worth all that much. Because I sourced it at a library sale, like a box sale, I think it was $5 per banker's box. which is large. I don't have one on hand. So I got one of these boxes for $5 for the entire box. So this cost pennies. This cost essentially nothing. So very low risk here. This is a pain in the ass to process and ship because it's big and heavy. It has to be bubble wrapped pretty extensively. If someone buys this with multiple other books, it's going to have to go into a cardboard box. There is more labor inherent in this or implied in this sourcing buy than a book like this. Just a mass market paperback that I can put 2 squares of bubble wrap around, shove it in a poly mailer, and out it goes. It takes essentially no labor at all. You can scale that up to, let's say you're sourcing an antique sewing machine that's made of cast iron and it weighs 100 pounds. Huge amount of headache to ship that thing or even to sell it locally. And you have to have a very educated guess that you're going to make enough money flipping that thing to make it worth your while. So get good at that skill. I would say those are like really important beginner considerations, beginner skills to think about. Another really important beginner skill is track your numbers and get good at tracking your numbers consistently. This is probably my single biggest weakness as a reseller, or I guess former reseller. These are my waning days as someone who's actually doing reselling. This has consistently been a bugbear, and it's actually kind of embarrassing to admit because it is so important. I had a general sense, like I kept books. I have like bookkeeping software. I don't check it enough. I didn't check it enough. I just have a general knowledge that I am making money, that I'm not losing money. But if you pin me down on any given day, I probably couldn't tell you exactly how much money I was making. This is not a good circumstance to be in. I have the luxury of having done this for long enough to know that I was doing it well enough. But if you're in a position where you're just starting out and you're already at risk of losing potentially quite a bit of money on this, like let's say you want to drop $3,000 into sourcing or something, not that you have to, but you want to double, triple check that you're doing everything correctly, that you are making money, that you're not making big mistakes. It'll also help you to catch your mistakes as you make them because you can look at the data. Important thing to do. And also, you will save yourself from some pretty gut-churning anxiety that's very real, will impact your health potentially. Like it's not something that you want to do, not a problem you want to expose yourself to, of just not knowing how steady the hand on your wheel really is. And this is something that bites a lot of resellers. It's not just me. I know that this is a really common problem. So just be smart, like be the adult in the room and do it. And I know that I know it's a pain in the ass and it's also kind of scary in some weird way, but just do it because not doing it is much scarier. Also important, get all your forms, get all your licenses sorted out. If you need to hire a CPA, hire a CPA, like track stuff, be an adult so that you don't have to panic and freak out. One thing that I have learned that is, I mean, it's as fundamental as calling the sky blue, but I guess it bears repeating, is keep your sourcing costs as rock bottom as you possibly can. There are ways around this. I've made plenty of money and plenty of videos about making money selling overpriced things that I buy at retail Goodwills and Salvation Armies, like $8, $10 for a shirt, flipping it for $30, $40. 100% you can do this. You can afford for the right item to pay up for it. This is just an inherent part of reselling. But again, big picture, the more time elapsed, the more I came to value. Just if you have, again, an unfairly cheap sourcing opportunity, go with that because it's much easier to make money when you're outlaying next to nothing for your goods. So your general quality of inventory can afford to suffer a little bit in the service of doing a larger volume of stuff that you get for really, really, really cheap. In fact, there are ways to get stuff for free, especially if you're new to reselling. I encourage you to try that out. I have videos about it on the channel. if you've been watching the channel, you know that I have struggled with chronic pain stuff. Generally, overall, not just with chronic pain, pay very close attention to your health. Like any job that we do, it comes with occupational hazards, especially in the form of repetitive strain injury. Like I'm a clothing reseller. Historically, I have mostly done clothing reselling, standing on your feet in one spot in a thrift store, slightly hunched over with your head down, flipping through hangers like this with this motion. Over the course of years, you do this enough millions of times, and it may hurt you pretty bad. When stuff begins to go south, if stuff begins to go south, whatever it is, if you have lower back pain from sitting at the computer, if you got anything weird going on, if your energy is flagging, if you just feel bad generally, if you feel that you're developing chronic pain stuff, address it immediately. Take it really seriously. Don't freak yourself out about it, but be proactive with it, because you don't want to end up in a position like I am and like a ton of commenters on these videos are, who find themselves in pretty bad situations because they weren't taking adequate care of their bodies. See a physical therapist. See more than one physical therapist. I know that it sucks. I've talked about this again in previous videos. I know how exasperating it is. I know that you are putting yourself in a position to potentially be taken advantage of a little bit, or to have to go through the headaches of dealing with an HMO system. Just do it. Get some eyes on the problem, some expert eyes. Make sure that you're in good enough hands. And it is so preferable to go way overkill on the front end on these things than to find yourself a few years down the road having to reformat your entire life around this one problem that becomes harder and harder to fix. If you are in that position, if you are many years down the line, maybe not from reselling, but just from whatever generally, I encourage you to do whatever you can to be proactive about it, deal with it, and take care of your health. Because especially if you're doing reselling full-time, it has to be sustainable. It has to be something that you can consistently do without mortgaging your health, your general ability to function as a person, which, once more, easier said than done, because we are all under a mandate to make money. And there's no really easy way to do that. You always have to pay a price somewhere. Don't allow that price to be your body. Early on as a reseller, you should make an active attempt to make allies and friends of other resellers in your area. It's good to have good relations with other resellers if you're sourcing at the same spots, because that can blow up into turf war, passive aggressive, or just aggressive in some cases. Not terribly common. You're not going to have people slashing your tires, but it can kind of sour. And those people can also be great allies. I've made a handful of friends who are resellers over the course of doing this. And outside of being a YouTuber, I think nothing has conferred more of an immediate advantage to me. Nothing has been so helpful in terms of doing the job and just being alive, because you're going to be spending a ton of time doing this job anyway. So the barrier between work friendships and friendships will blur. They are a force amplifier that will improve everything about your reselling endeavor, assuming you find good people. So try to find good people. Kind of similar. I'm not boostering for everybody to become a reselling YouTuber or a YouTuber period, or TikToker or whatever. If you have an interest in doing YouTube, I'll speak only for YouTube because that's what I do. If that's something that potentially interests you, start immediately. Nothing I have done in reselling has been more helpful, has changed my life more dramatically than beginning to do YouTube videos. The early videos were not great. I only got those early videos, maybe like 50 views on them for most of them. I think a bunch of them sub 50 views. I remember at the first real haul video I published, I felt that it was a hit, big hit, because it got 100 views from friends and family. Kept consistently doing it for a couple of years. Channel blew up, became relatively much more successful than it was. Has been a huge alleviation of many of the stresses of doing reselling. And this is something I don't think happens as much anymore, that people really turn the screws on reselling YouTubers being fake resellers or whatever. This was an article of controversy when I first started. I don't think people care as much anymore as they did a few years ago. But I can full-throatedly endorse being a reseller YouTuber. There are so many things that it does for you. You have a hive mind that you can go to with problems, who can help you troubleshoot stuff. You have doors open up to you with sourcing. Allies and friends find you. And it just, it makes life much more comfortable and enjoyable and easy, assuming that you can deal with the work of doing it and kind of the negative the downsides of doing it. I have, again, a video on the channel talking about all this. If you're thinking about doing it, just do it. Even if you don't feel like you know what you're talking about, even if you don't feel that you're camera ready, even if you feel like you're not a fit, I would just do it. If you have a voice in your head saying you should do it, just do it. And if you enjoy it, keep doing it. If you are working from home, if you don't have designated office space or a storage unit that you work out of for reselling, I have found it very, very helpful to keep as much of a boundary between my workspace and my living space as possible. It doesn't work all the time, but we're here in my bedroom that has a door on it, and I sacrificed this bedroom to be the workroom with all my inventory and the computer and all that. There's one little photo area out there that I do use for work. Otherwise, that's all my living space. Out there, I put my bed in my living room so that I could close the door on this room that is full of clutter and kind of have some psychological distance. The proper healthy thing to do is probably to rent some space so that you can have your home to yourself, but we're not all in a position where our operations are big enough to justify it, or we have enough money, whatever. Never quite made sense for me to do it as someone who didn't have employees. It has a relatively small inventory that I maintain. Having some kind of separation is really healthy, because doing reselling, assuming you're not warehousing all your stuff at Amazon, if you're doing FBA, or if you're not doing strictly whatnot auctions where you're not even hanging on to the stuff at all for longer than like 24 hours. If you store static inventory, you can become pretty overwhelmed pretty quickly with clutter. And I have found that it creeps up on you. The psychological impact of that creeps up on you, of having stuff underfoot all the time, tripping over yourself, playing Tetris, trying to navigate around big piles of death, big death piles of whatever. Like, it sucks. And it'll hurt you in some way, probably. You need distance. When you resell for longer than a few months, you will notice that you are standing on shaky ground. You will notice after a course of maybe half a year that the market looks different in some substantial way than it did 6 months ago. In terms of the profitability of certain items, assuming that you're tracking that, which you should be. You should be paying attention to how much stuff is selling for and how quickly it's selling. That can change. The platforms themselves can change. Your sourcing opportunities locally to you can change. Personal relationships can change. The tax code can change. Everything constantly in change, in motion. This is the water in which you now swim. This is a precondition of being an actor on the market. The market is going to change around. As trite as it is to say, you have to be willing to change with the market. If you are not willing to change with the market will punish you. You will make less money. You will be more unhappy. So you should narrow in on a couple of things that you want to sell, but within those niches, you should be hyper attentive to changes and shifts at every point along that chain of whatever, profitability of, can you still source it? Is it still profitable? Is the demand still healthy? Does it still make sense? Like, did USPS raise rates in a way that is going to undercut your profitability? If you don't know how to do all this arithmetic, find a profit calculator for eBay or whatever other platform it is that you're selling on. They're free, they're online, they're super helpful. You just punch in these numbers and go. While you should be intaking as much information as possible, both from the market and also from commentators such as your handsome boy, you should be interpreting that through a cipher of a big grain of salt. Speaking mostly for YouTube, reselling YouTubers have a tendency to overblow issues, whether they mean to do it for clicks or not. This just is the tendency. The volume gets turned way up, threats get overstated, and certain things get understated. So you have to just be willing to kind of take everything as one smaller piece of a bigger picture, and don't discount anybody's commentary, but don't take anything on faith either. Probably the big piece of advice is another thing that's kind of cliche, which is whatever it is you wind up doing, whatever your process becomes, these decisions that you make, you want to settle on something that you can do consistently. You don't want to bite off too much, and you'll go through periods of saying, like, I am David Goggins, I'm going to wake up at 4:30 in the morning and I'm going to list 50 shirts today, and this is going to become my life now because I want to suck out the marrow of all the money that I can get out of eBay, and I'm Mr. Hustle Man and I'm going to do it. I've done this many times. That will follow almost inevitably with a crash of taking long breaks because you burn yourself out, you get sick of it, you overestimate your abilities. You have to be looking at this from a perspective of, am I going to be able to do this 3 months from now at the same level as I am now? So maybe you want to do 50 listings a day. Feasibly, that number might be 10 or 15 listings, especially when you're first starting out, especially when this is all kind of new to you and you have to take your time. You should take your time to a certain degree. If you can do 10 listings a day for 90 days, that is way preferable to doing 50 listings a day for 7 days and then taking a week off, and then doing 20 and then taking a day off, and then doing 50 again and then taking 5 days off. Get the picture? You want consistency, both because it massages the algorithms on these platforms, especially on eBay, and also because you want to be able to do this consistently, to have this be a thing that you don't have to consciously think about, having to consciously motivate yourself to do this every day. This should become autopilot at a certain point. Those are the things that I wrote down. Let me think in my giant genius brain if there's anything else. Don't let your personal tastes influence your reselling necessarily. So I sell in two niches, books and clothing. Books I do care about very much. I have a deep personal stake in books. I love books. Probably never going to get tired of books. And I think that I hate the word, passion for books has carried over in certain ways. But it has its disadvantages because I will go out to source books and I'll find a rare, like if I found a rare James Blish book that I know to be worth $50, but I don't have a copy, there's no chance I'm going to sell it. That's going to wind up on my bookshelf or on my fireplace, as it were. That's a disadvantage. Whereas, if I find a Filson shirt, who cares? I don't care. Don't care about clothing. Have never really cared about clothing. Have no passion for it. I think fashion is silly for the most part. Don't care. Can approach it with total dispassion, just on this math plane of, here is a thing, here is this object, this has XYZ sell-through rate, I can source it for XYZ dollars, and I can expect whatever, $10 profit. If I settle for $8 profit, it's not gonna twist a knife in my guts to do it. This is I think, kind of a superior position to be in because it allows you to just operate in this calculated way in both senses of that word. Be able to look at reselling as what it is, which is a job and a really good job. And reselling has a lot of downsides. There are plenty of people that have made videos going through all the downsides of being a reseller, especially being a full-time reseller. Everything has downsides. Nothing is going to be completely rose-tinted and is going to solve all of your problems. Reselling is a job. It's a means to make money consistently. Out of all the means to make money consistently that I have tried, reselling is the best. It's still the best. Even though I am setting it aside for a couple of different reasons, I still look at it as the best job that I've had. Maintain that perspective for as long as you can. And remind yourself how much better this is than sitting at a desk in some office somewhere, potentially. Not that there's really anything wrong with that, but whatever. Compare it to other jobs that you've had and don't lose perspective on the fact that it is actually a good thing to do. Keep track of that perspective too, of it is a way to make money. It is not an identity. Every job has a community around it. This one generates a bigger sense of community because a lot of people are self-employed and rely on each other for advice and help. Nothing wrong with that at all. But when you become a reseller, it actually, I'll speak only from my own experience, it kind of files the points of your teeth off a little bit. There are times, have been times where I've had an acute need for money and I resell very differently then than I do when I'm just kind of spinning the wheels or maintaining the reselling thing, just going with my own flow. I am way more precise with sourcing. I'm more aggressive. I sell more actively. I just am trying to get the money. That's a really, I think, a healthier way to look at reselling. It's not, I am a reseller. It's, I need a certain amount of money every month. How do I get that money? You know, short of knocking over 7-Elevens or selling unscrupulously. But that's a much better motivation to go through your death pile, go sourcing, deal with all the headaches. You're trying to get the juice for the squeeze. Don't lose sight of the juice. Don't lose sight of the money. Don't get swept up in becoming a professional sourcer. Don't put too much on your plate. Don't distract yourself with too much stuff. Just you're trying to get the money so that you can live the rest of your life. There are a million questions to answer with reselling that you'll have to keep answering. You know, I didn't talk about process on any particular platform. I didn't talk about should you have an eBay store, should you do free shipping, whatever. These are questions for, I think, kind of mid-range when you have to, you know, knuckle down on this and really take it serious. And those are questions, again, that you should keep asking and keep answering. You don't want to get caught in a rut where you're just doing the same thing that you've been doing and you want to constantly be second-guessing yourself to a healthy degree. And still, you know, keep some pep in your step, have some self-confidence. Don't let dips in sales scare you too bad. I think I wanted to say this at some point and I forgot. Overall sales trends for particular niches ebb and flow. The whole market ebbs and flows. Don't freak yourself out or don't let yourself get inordinately freaked out if you go through a fallow period of sales, because typically they will pick up. Just sell your way through that slump. Sales should improve. Don't take that as a signal that you should panic and start purging stuff out of your business willy-nilly or changing everything up. Just stick to your guns a little bit. You can tweak things, improve things, do things slightly different. If over the course of half a year it's still a catastrophic situation, then yes, reevaluate. Maybe you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. But don't let people freak you out. Don't let you freak yourself out. Probably be all right. Hope it helps. I think a lot of the stuff I've said at some point before, but this is really the mission statement. This is the best advice that I can think of to offer you if you are a new reseller. Hope it helps. Thanks for watching. Good luck.